Welcome to the Raiders Training Camp Podcast, presented by SiriusXM. Live from the Intermountain Healthcare Performance Center, here are your hosts, Jesse Merrick and Eddie Paskal.
Happy Wednesday, Raider Nation. Eddie Paskal and Jesse Merrick here, back for Episode 7 of the Raiders Training Camp Podcast, presented by SiriusXM. Jesse, 7... it feels like we've been doing this for a long time, but also not a long time at all.
No, yeah, it's wild. Like the way time works in training camp. I mean, what is time anyway,
exactly.
right?
Exactly. Incredible. But we are back today, and dude, we got a lot to talk about. I know we've only had like, I think one or two practices since the last time we did the show.
Yeah.
But there has been no shortage of storylines to follow for your Las Vegas Raiders. And let's just begin here, right? We'll talk about practice in a little bit. But yesterday, on Tuesday, the Raiders, along with the other 31 teams in the NFL, league-mandated cut day down to 85, and the Raiders made the following moves. They released wide receiver Demarcus Robinson, more on that in a second, in defensive tackle Vernon Butler, and also waived Gary Green, close personal friend of Jesse Merrick.
My guy.
Tyrone Wheatley Jr. and cornerback Nate Brooks. So, you looked at the 5. You saw the 5 come through yesterday. Any surprises from our first wave of cuts?
I mean, the surprise, first of all, was that I had to pour one out for my guy, Gary.
Yeah, man.
I mean, you know, anybody that's listened to the pod last year, this year, knows that I've always been high on him. I like the tools that he has. You know, so I was bummed to see him go, but, would love to see him land somewhere else. The big one that everyone talks about is Demarcus Robinson. And I think initially I was shocked more so just because I had a thought last week where I was watching practice, and he kind of caught my eye at one point, and I was like, man, I haven't really noticed him much. And so I had that thought kind of pop into my head where I'm like, does he make the team? You know, given the fact that, T. Billy and DJ Turner are guys that have looked very good and do a lot for this team. But I definitely didn't expect to see him go in the first round of cuts. So that was, I think, essentially where I was a little surprised. But you got to imagine, look, they throw the vet a bone, like, hey, look, we think you're not going to make the team, so you cut him loose, in that first round of it, so he's got a better chance to make another team.
Yeah, and I agree with you there, where I think the surprise more is the name than kind of what we've seen at practice. And this is not to kind of disparage anything that Demarcus did during his time in silver and black, but I think you said it perfectly, where I think over the past couple days, weeks, you're kind of like, oh, that's right, Demarcus Robinson is still here. And it felt like he was a guy that the expectation was coming in where he would, certainly not be Davante Adams 2.0, but he's a guy that's going to come in, contribute, be solid, kind of have his moments, have his flashes, have his Mac Hollins in the corner of the end zone moment.
Yeah.
And we just never got any of those from Demarcus. And when I think what's interesting to me, though, is when we look at the wide receiver room now, and this is not like a bad thing by any stretch, it's just interesting that Davante Adams is now the oldest wide receiver in that room.
Ooh.
Davante Adams and Keelan Cole, both 29 years old. And then you go down the list of the other wide receivers on the roster, 23, 28, 26, 26. Demarcus Robinson is a guy, a veteran dude, who's played a lot of football, won a Super Bowl, and I think that we might put a little too much emphasis on the, quote, veteran presence in the room.
Yeah.
But that big dog veteran presence, kind of taking Davante out of it, doesn't exist there now wwithout Demarcus.
No, yeah, I would agree, and I didn't even realize that when, you go and look at it like that. It is interesting, but at the end of the day, it's a young man's game. You said take Davante out of it, so we're trying to remove that from the equation there. Having said that, I think it's still a mature group, in terms of what they've done in the league or the continuity and, staying power they've had on different teams and the multitude of things that they've done for those teams. Look at a guy like Mac, done it all on special teams and stuff as well, and just comes in and seems like a unique guy that has an interesting outlook on life where I think, for me, seems a lot older than what his age actually is.
Yeah, I mean, Hunter Renfrow, the same deal. When I remember we were talking to Hunter, what was that, 2 weeks ago now, where he's like, I'm not a young guy, but I'm not a vet.
Yeah,
but like
middle ground.
Yeah, but he certainly carries himself and has produced like a veteran in the NFL. Yeah, I know Hunter's only 26 years old, but I mean, when he speaks in that room, I have to imagine it carries a lot of weight.
Oh, 100%. I mean, Davante noted that they're bouncing ideas off of each other. And if a guy like Davante Adams is listening to Hunter Renfrow, you better believe that everybody else in that room, in that locker room as a whole, is going to listen when Hunter talks.
100%. And I think what's interesting to me now as we get close to Miami, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and then ultimately as we wrap up the preseason against the Patriots, is it was something that you and I were curious about heading into this training camp. What does the bottom portion of this wide receiver room look like?
Yeah.
And now I feel like it got a whole lot more interesting. Throw the fact that Demarcus isn't there. Dylan Stoner returned to practice along with a bunch of others. More on that in a sec. But it's an interesting group, and I think for those guys in particular, I know we focus so much on the offensive line during the preseason, which we should.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be keeping a real close eye on the receivers these next 2 weeks.
It is. The big question is how many are they going to keep?
Yeah. What's the magic number?
5, 6. Who knows what that number is? But I think with Demarcus, being sent off, that really means some big things. That this coaching staff sees big things possibly for DJ and T. Billy. Tyron Johnson. Those are guys that I think have done well for themselves throughout camp. I'd say, I know that, a lot of us in the media have talked about Tyron a lot, and he's done very well. But I think DJ may get the edge right now just in terms of how much he can actually do in terms of the special teams and returning and all this stuff like that. But that's a battle I'm definitely going to be watching down the stretch.
Especially for the guys bottom portion of that roster, or excuse me, that position group, you need to be able to do a lot of things really, really well. And I think the one thing that we've seen from T. Billy is he has that explosive nature to him. He can do a lot of things. Now let's see him kind of translate that to the games, because he's had his moments in practice, right? He's had his moments during the preseason games as well. But can you be a consistent catcher of the football when the lights are bright, when you need to come down with this ball? How do you react? That's what I'll be, with him in particular, that's what I'll be watching over these next 2 preseason games.
We definitely need to see that, because think about it. In the games themselves, how close has he been to coming down with that big play where you're like, oh my gosh, like what a play, and like all the hype is real that we keep hearing from everybody that's at practice. And then Raider Nation gets to see that in person in the game. If he comes down with those catches, there's 2 to come to mind. Whereas, not only becomes the talk of, the preseason games offensively, but also around the league, some buzz, maybe like, hey, what are we missing with this guy? So that's where I think, against that game in Miami, that's going to be like, all right, man, like, can you come down with one of these ones and make that play?
Yeah, and he's got 2 more chances to do it, right?
Exactly.
He's got 2 more opportunities to go out there, show Josh McDaniels and the staff, hey, this is what I can do. This is who I can be on a consistent basis, right? I think that we know who T. Billy can be from, one play to the other and the kind of big playability he has, but can you do it, down in, down out? Can you do it for a full 60 minutes? That'll be interesting. And I know that the names come through yesterday, and Demarcus Robinson is the one that pops for obvious reasons, but where I was really kind of interested after we shared our text about your guy Gary no longer being on the roster was the Vernon Butler one. To me was interesting, and it was interesting to me in this way where I thought, okay, kind of a surprising move to get rid of one of your healthy defensive tackles when you don't have a ton of healthy defensive tackles. Well, guess who came back today in a big way? Big time Hank, Bilal Nichols back on the field. And actually, we had a lot of returns. I had to get my notes because we had so many. Guys that returned to practice today, Jesse Merrick, Darren Waller, Trayvon Mullen, interesting.
Big
Rock Yassin, the aforementioned Big Time Hank, Bilal Nichols, Divine Diablo, and Dylan Stoner. A lot of guys, a lot of healthy bodies getting back in the mix today out here at the Intermountain Healthcare Performance Center.
Almost looks like a new team.
Seriously, man. I mean, hang on. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 8 guys.
That's a lot of guys to come back. Yeah, specifically too with Mullen. I mean, that's the thing where full disclosure, I wasn't allowed to practice. Not allowed. I wasn't able to be at practice today. I had a dentist.
You're always allowed. Yeah, come on. Let's
I'm allowed.
Yeah, Jesse's not been banished yet. No.
Got to phrase that correctly. Wasn't able to see it today, but I'll be back tomorrow. So Mullen's a guy that I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to. Just as it pertains to that battle for that job opposite Rock, which I think Rock's going to lock that one down. So really, with Anthony Averett out, now Mullen's going to probably take on a lot more of that load. But then you also go and throw a guy like Nate Hobbs into the mix, who they've thrown outside as well. So, I mean, that battle outside of corner is going to be very interesting. But then you get the injection of those guys back at D-tackle, the guys that we expect to probably start. That's massive.
Yeah, and I think, we'll obviously do our Miami preview, but I'm curious how Patrick Graham and the staff handles Trayvon this weekend, because technically today's Wednesday, so he'll have Wednesday. I mean, he'll have 2 practices before a game. I don't know if that's enough, if you feel good enough about him to go out there and be able to protect himself after 2 practices to go and play against the Miami Dolphins. I don't know. I'll be very interested to see what his playing time looks like, if it looks like anything.
That's a really good question. I would say if it's me, I would lean more towards the let's wait, see how he does in the
joint practices coming up.
Exactly. And then play him in that last preseason game, which, it kind of sucks, kind of puts him behind the 8 ball a bit when you're trying to win a starting job. We don't know how serious the injury is to Anthony Averett, but I think, just wait a bit longer, because also too, okay, you play him, what are you going to get out of throwing him out there for 1 or 2 series?
Yeah.
Give the guy more of a runway to kind of get healthy, get good, and that's where you're really going to, these guys talk about all the time in these joint practices that they gain so much more from those than they do, the games themselves. So that's where I think you're going to get a really good look at him next week.
Yeah, and I think the joint practice is going to be, illuminating for us in a variety of ways. But I agree with you where I think at some point you got to protect the player from himself a little bit. Like I'm sure Trayvon is like, yo, I'm ready to go. Like I'm trying to go win this job. Like I'm ready to go get it. And I guess obviously you and I are not in the training room and know exactly what his regimen and his ramp up plan is. Yeah. But I would, all things equal, I would kind of err on the side of caution too with him, because when he's right and it feels like, we haven't seen the version of Trayvon that we kind of got to know a little bit in Oakland and then really saw his first year in Vegas, where it's like when he's right, he can be a very valuable piece to your defense. So I don't know if the risk outweighs the reward in terms of putting him out there on Saturday night. I don't know.
No, I don't agree, because that's where, when we talked about it early on the pod, one of the previous episodes, that I think a guy like Trayvon Mullen is the reason why there aren't question marks around this one, just simply because you pair him with all the other guys that they did bring in that I think are gonna bat above their average this year. So I think him coming back, massive for that group if he's the guy that you noted that we saw glimpses of.
And in terms of guys coming back, my heart was so full to see the big fellas back out there today, because I know that it's not a great sample size, but from what we saw on, was it Sunday night at Allegiant? What are days? Years ago. Yeah, exactly. What are days? But the Raiders had a really hard time stopping the run for big portions of that game. What helps? Jonathan Hankins and Bilal Nichols help in a big way. Yeah. So to get them back to practice, and same deal as Trayvon, like I don't know what exactly their ramp-up plan is. I'd be a little surprised if we saw them on Saturday night, but just to have them back and healthy enough to go practice, a great sign, especially as we record this on August 17th.
Yeah, look, two dogs in the middle, where again, we saw this depth
assume starters, like you were saying.
Exactly. We saw this depth really tested from the get-go. We're 2.5 weeks into camp now. Is that two?
Three. I think we're in. Who knows?
Yeah. Gosh. Yeah. Again,
a long time. We're into it. But Carmen Priscilla just said we're in the dog days of camp, so we're in the dog days of camp.
Yeah. Yeah. So to go that long without your two presumed starters, on the inside there, that's going to be massive to get them back. Not only for the depth aspect of it, but one to see what these guys can do in this defense. That's what I'm really interested to watch and see. Again, do we see them in the game against Miami? I don't know. We don't have all the details on the injuries and whatnot, so I don't know how bad they were. But I'd imagine maybe, again, I hate to contradict myself.
Yeah, what's your gut say? What's your gut say?
My gut says we're going to see them.
Okay.
Again, what are you going to get out of seeing them for two series? But I think it's a little different there on the inside. Or maybe we don't, because, if you're not going to play Max and Chandler, why throw those other two guys in there as well?
And I think, it'll be incredibly interesting come Saturday night to see who's actually wearing shoulder pads and breaking a sweat. But I think the timing for the big fella's return is good. We're still, 3.5 weeks out from the start of week one. Mm-hmm. And you know how different every athlete is and different body types and that. It's going to take the big fellas a little bit to get ramped up, to be ready to go and to do what they need to do on a game day. So if they were coming back a week from now, 2 weeks from now, all of a sudden you're like, all right, what's week one going to look like? But they're going to have ample time to get ready. We've talked about the joint practices starting next week with the Patriots. Having Bilal and Big Time Hank back in the mix, healthy, able to do what they do and to get ramped up over 28 days, whatever it is, I think that's a net positive for this team as a whole.
100% agree. And Bilal is one of those guys that I think, a lot of people were talking about in the offseason is could be a sneaky good, signing, So I'm just curious to see, what he is able to do, especially when we do see them in practice, because, again, don't know what it's going to look like in the game, but see what he can do when he's flanked by guys like Max and Chandler Jones. So that's the thing where, I know I keep saying excited, but I just want to see what these big guys can do in this defense, because we've gone this whole time watching the depth pieces, and it's been great watching those guys, great opportunity for them. But now let's see what these guys who, again, we think are going to be starters, what they can actually do in the middle there and clog things up for them.
If we're this fired up to see Bilal and Hankins and these guys, can you imagine what Patrick Graham's feeling? He's probably just finally, yes.
Nice little injection, right in the middle of
100%.
camp to be like, all right, sweet, let's go. Let's throw these big boys out there and see what they can do. Again, you noted the fact that they struggled stopping the run. So, okay, you throw a couple big bodies in there.
That helps.
A different story.
Big time. And I think we can all now collectively exhale. We can all relax. Darren Waller was back at practice. From everything that we've heard from everyone around the league, wasn't serious, kind of just being overly cautious with a guy like number 83, and he's back. He's going to practice. Will he play on Saturday night? Another big question, but we can all exhale. He's fine. Back to doing what he does best.
Yeah, I'm not a betting man, but I'd be willing to bet a decent amount of money that we do not see Darren Waller in Miami on the field playing in the game. I think we will see him on the field.
Yeah, the old McDaniels, yes. He'll be at the stadium.
Exactly. Yeah. But, it just always cracks me up when people freak out about like absences in training camp and all this stuff. As you noted, still got like 3 weeks until the opener. Like, come on, man. Let's all just calm down. Also, Darren Waller's not the guy to like stick it to the team, in the middle of camp. I know a lot of people talking about like, oh, maybe it's a contract thing. Da, da, da. No, that's not that. When has he ever shown you that he's that guy?
Never.
Like, never. So I thought it was all wild. Like, and, like, if I'm a fan, too, like, because, look, I'm a fan of another NFL team. Like, I get, like, the highs and lows of things that you kind of ride along with in this one. But, like, if a guy's going to miss some time, go ahead and miss time now.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Especially if you're a guy like Darren
Exactly.
Waller, right? And, I think everyone I said is going to sleep a little bit easier tonight knowing that he's back. But I would say even, and thankfully this is not the case, but even if he was missing practice a week from now, you'd be like, okay, he's still got time.
Exactly.
You get to 2 weeks from now, 2.5 weeks from now, maybe you're starting to not panic, but maybe we're starting to warm up the panic button a little bit.
Yeah.
But thankfully, we're not going to have to worry about that.
No.
He's back to work, doing his thing. And it'll be really exciting, especially next week with the joint practices, to see if everyone is healthy and out there, what this offense looks like against a different defense.
Oh, 100%. That's going to be the fun part to watch for sure. Just simply, good on good. I mean, I've seen all the reports of all the fights and the intensity coming out with the Patriots going up against the Panthers this week in joint practices. Obviously, a group that's like ready to compete. So I'm curious what that's going to look like when they come here. Two coaching staffs that have obviously a lot of respect and a lot of similarities, of each other. So I'm real curious to see. And also, too, I think it's going to help, the guys on offense, the guys on defense to see like this scheme in action from groups that have done it for a long time.
Yeah.
Have been there, done that. So that's going to be interesting. But also, too, to go back to the Darren Waller thing, like, I don't think it's as big of a thing. Like, let's say it was Devontae that was out, knock on wood, that doesn't happen. Then you kind of be like, oh, man, like, he hasn't worked with Darren or with Derek for a while, learning a new offense, adding all that in. Like, yes, Darren is also learning a new offense, but he's got that continuity with Derek Carr already. So I don't think you're missing out on any of that stuff.
And to use Derek's favorite term, right, they have the time on task together.
Exactly.
There's not going to be anything that Derek is going to see from Darren on a game day or vice versa that the two haven't gone through together. So, like I said, we can all relax. Everyone can just exhale. He's back. He's going to work. We did it, everyone. We survived the great Darren Waller. Will he practice? Won't he practice of 2022? Congratulations. Before we look ahead to Miami, though, one other transaction we didn't get to, Tyree Gillespie, now a member of the Tennessee Titans, waiting to hear back what the compensation was for Tyree. But I don't want to say super surprising that he was traded, but a little surprising, right?
Yeah, a little bit. Similar situation where, like, when all these things happen, when moves or guys are cut, things like that, you try and, like, go back and think, like, well, wait, hey, when has this guy caught my eye? When has he happened? And, again, no disrespect, but I just hadn't seen a lot from 37, You look at the other safeties on this roster, I think that they have all flashed a bit more, than he had in this new system. He's a guy who I thought coming out was honestly going to do more than he did. So I was surprised in that sense to see that they cut him loose there. But having said that, like again, you read the tea leaves, you look at the talent that's on this team, specifically on the back end, those safeties they've got, and you can see why they made that move. And also good on them. Again, don't know quite what the return is, but to possibly get something in return for a guy that you're going to move on from, like, good on Ziegler and company.
100%. You look at Tyree's rookie year, appeared in 11 games, finishes with 8 tackles, right? I mean, to your point, a guy who I think immensely talented, but for whatever reason, it just didn't pan out here. And hopefully he has a great opportunity there in Tennessee to kind of have the next chapter of his career and do great. And, once a Raider, always a Raider. But, he is no longer a part of this program. And it will be interesting to see when the official news does come through what the compensation was that we got back in return for Tyree. Looking ahead to Miami now. Preseason game number 3.
Yeah.
My question to you, and there is no shortage of storylines that we could discuss headed into this game, but I think the big one for me, and it's kind of been the water cooler talk, if you will, who gets to start at quarterback?
Yeah.
Because if you would have asked me this 10 days ago after the Hall of Fame game, I'm like, oh, Jarrett Stidham's the dude. Lock it in, number 2. We'll see what happens with Nick Mullins. But then Nick Mullins has a really nice night on Sunday night. Jarrett Stidham, I think, has a solid night. But all of a sudden you're like, oh, this Nick Mullins guy. Let's see. So 3rd preseason game. The Raiders have the benefit of having this extra game. So they're 3rd. Miami's 2nd.
Yeah.
What do you do under center?
Man, I hate to pour water on your fire there. It's steady.
You think so?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, brother. I don't know.
I don't think there's any question either.
No, zero question. You're that confident?
I am, yeah.
I'm going to clip this one. I'm going to make sure Ray and Al clip this one.
I'm looking into the camera. Stiddy is starting against the Dolphins now.
All right. I don't know, man. I mean, I think that there's value. I think there's value in giving Mullins a little run, right? Because I think we've seen Mullins play with some of the guys a little lower on the roster. I think he's done a nice job. I think he had a really nice night on Sunday. Mm-hmm. I'd be curious to see what he can do with the guys a little bit higher up on the roster. Obviously, he's not going to get the benefit of Devontae and Darren and Josh Jacobs, but like
none of them will. Yeah.
Let's see. I'm curious. I think my interest has been piqued a little bit. I think if you were to, once again, not a betting man like you, but I think I would assume that Jarrett probably has the edge slightly, but I think just for the sake of competition, for the sake of doing your due diligence and doing your homework, trot him out there on Sunday or Saturday night. See what you got.
Yeah, look, to play devil's advocate, I could totally see why you go and do that. Again, you don't want to put a guy behind the 8 ball based off of who he's playing with. No disrespect to any of the guys that he's lined up with or anything like that. But I could see wanting to give him that opportunity, with those guys. Having said that, taking off that devil's advocate hat, sure. I just think Stidham is a guy that has the trust of this coaching staff in that backup role, where I think that it's pretty much locked up. I know it's a competition. They're going to say it is, but I honestly...
Spicy Jesse today. Stephen A. Merrick in the house. My God. Merrick.
I'm telling you, though, man, I think he's got that backup job locked up, to be honest. Think about it. He's got the experience with the coaching staff in this offense, all that stuff. I thought he had the edge coming into camp. And after watching 2 preseason games, so much action, so much stuff they're going to pull from the preseason games when I sit here on this same pod and say you can't take too much from the preseason games. Having said that, I think, Stidham, is going to be the guy that win the backup job.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Look, I mean, time will tell. We still have, I think we're 2 weeks from yesterday, yesterday, that the Dave Ziegler and Josh will cut down to 53. My gut tells me that Mullins gets the start. Yeah. I don't know why. I don't know. I wish I had something better than that's kind of what my feeling tells me, but I don't know.
So here's a quick question. It's a little sidebar on this one. You think they keep 2 or 3 quarterbacks?
I think it depends. Oh, man. I mean...
We're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, I know. Let's say we'll do the exercise. I think it depends on what the room looks like, right? Yeah. Because I think if you're Dave Ziegler and Josh, you probably have to think that Mullins has a better chance of clearing waivers than Jarrett does. Yeah. Right?
I would say so.
And so unless Mullins comes out and, goes wild these next 14 days, I don't know.
It's a tough question.
Can I say 2 on the active roster, 1 on the practice squad? Is that a cop-out answer?
Yeah, I think that's a cop-out.
It's a cop-out answer?
I'm more so asking, active roster.
I'm going to say 2.
Yeah?
I'm going to say 2.
You think 2? I think it's 3.
You're going to...
I do, which, this is one I go back
This is actually good for once because you and I actually don't agree. Usually we agree on 99% of things, but you think they're going to keep 3.
I think they're going to keep 3. I'm not super confident about that, but I just, the gut tells me 3.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can't even give you a good reason why I think that is.
Hey, I couldn't give you a good reason why I thought that Mullins was going to start on Saturday. Yeah. So, but it is interesting and it is fun to have these discussions and debates because you don't have to worry about who the starter is, right? Yeah. You're not like, exactly. I wonder if number 4 is going to be ready to rock in week 1. But I don't know, man. I think 2 and a practice squad guy. I mean, the one guy, and we're really going down the rabbit hole here. The one thing that interests me now is the Chase Garbers deal. If you're building out a quarterback room, because obviously I listen, never say never, but I would be shocked if he was on the 53. But he seems like a prime practice squad guy.
I would say so.
So if you have to if you cut ties with either Jarrett or Nick, you got to feel pretty confident that you can get Garbers back on the practice squad, which would bring you to the 2 + 1 on the squad is 3. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I could see it. The big question is are they confident that Mullins? I'm putting the cart before the horse here. No offense to Mullins, but are you confident that he would be able to clear waivers? That's I think the big question there.
That's the $1 million question. Yeah, right. That's the $1 million question. And I think you got to look around. So who is his? He was in Cleveland last year, right?
I believe so.
New staff there. They have the same staff, right?
Same staff. Same staff.
So I don't know. I don't know. They got questions at quarterback.
They do. They got Jacoby though. I think they just signed somebody though recently. They brought somebody in. I can't remember who it was.
It'll be interesting. I don't know. It'll be a very interesting 2 weeks that I think will begin with the Nick Mullins start on Saturday night.
Yeah. I think you're wrong.
What do you? I mean. Outside of the quarterback play, what are you looking for on Saturday in Miami, though?
Yeah, I think, the biggest thing, now, especially seeing them go against a team like Minnesota that's, got great running backs, the depth clearly showed there. Can you stop the run? that's something I think we need to see, because we saw Josh in the first game talk about how the tackling he thought was okay early on, and then it kind of dipped off. And then you see the running game kind of start to dice him up a little bit there. Do you fix that now going into week 3, your third preseason game there, and can you kind of clog things up a little bit more with this Miami team? I don't know a ton about the backs and the depth that they have on that roster, but knowing where Mike McDaniel comes from, I'd imagine they're going to want to run the ball.
Yeah, and I wonder if we're going to see old friend of the program, Alec Ingold, out there on Saturday night.
Good question. I'd imagine so.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's one of those
keeping
positions.
in mind Alice coming back from the ACL last year.
Yeah, that too. Like also one of those positions, like if you play fullback, like you got to get out there. You got to hit somebody.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I'd imagine we'd probably see him out there, which would be great to see.
Yeah, it'd be great to see him. Friend of the program, Alec. As we said it at the time, we wish nothing but health and success for him. He's one of the best guys that we've had in this building in a long time, and we're hoping that he goes out and just dominates in Miami.
Yeah.
Things that I'm looking for ahead of Miami. I know you took the defense a little bit. We talked about it a little bit at the top. I'm going to be looking at the depth in this wide receiver room.
Yeah.
Right? Someone's going to go win a job. Someone is going to go take a job either Saturday or the following Friday back here at Allegiant Stadium against the Patriots. Someone's going to do it. Who is it going to be? That's the big question. Who is it going to be? And then I think to kind of switch position groups a little bit too, the running backs. I think that we have a logjam at running back. I think you could make an argument that the running back room is the most talented group on this roster, and you're not going to be able to keep 13 backs or whatever number we have on there. So I'm really curious to see what those guys do. The Austin Walter experiment that has gone incredibly well through 2 weeks. I think he's averaging I did the math. I think he's averaging north of 5 yards to carry through 2 games.
I heard that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's good. That'll check out.
Yeah.
But I'm curious what he does against Miami. I'm curious who plays against Miami. The rookies. I know we've all been kind of infatuated by Zamir. I thought Britton Brown had a really nice night on Sunday night against the Vikings. But those 2 groups in particular, depth on the wide receiving room, in the wide receiver room, and then who goes out and really kind of puts their stamp on this running back group as well. Those are the 2 things I'll be keyed in on.
Yeah, 2 really intriguing storylines that have kind of emerged, throughout camp, and I agree with you. That running back room, I mean, we kind of saw it in the first game, but then it's just been thrown in our face once again in that second game, just how deep and good the young guys are on this roster. Every time I watch Austin Walter, I just am amazed. Just simply he just gets faster and faster every time I watch him. I'm always I remember watching him in the game being wow. That dude was quick and shifty. I thought he was Kenyon Drake at one point. Watching it from afar, and I was like, wait a second, that's not Kenyon. So I've been really impressed with what I've seen from that kid. And I'm curious to see how he does. You noted Britton Brown, another guy that I thought definitely had a really good game. I mean, you've got to imagine that they have created some conversations within that coaching staff. Where they're hey, we've got some young guys on this team that are making much less money than some other guys in this room here. What are we going to do about this if they continue to do this?
And it's a great problem to have.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic problem to have. I think we even you should probably put it in air quotes, right? But it's it's super intriguing how this is going to shake out, because while we talked about there's jobs to be won in that wide receiver room, I think you can say the same about the backs.
Yeah.
I really do. And you and I were talking at the game on Sunday, and you brought up a great point where you said, Austin Walter, he just always falls forward. He doesn't get hit behind the line of scrimmage.
No.
This is a dude who's just constantly he reminds me of, and not physically at all, because they're 2 very separate guys, but Latavius Murray did that too.
I could see
where
that.
Latavius, it felt like he never took a loss.
Yeah.
He would turn the 2-yard loss into a half-yard gain or a no gain. And I think a lot of it was because he simply was so big. Latavius was such an imposing physical figure that I think he was able to – he would just lean on people, right?
Yeah.
He would lean on backs and he would fall forward. But the same thing with Austin Walter. And like I said, 2 very different body types, 2 very different players. But I kind of see that similarity where they're guys that aren't going to take losses, and they're going to turn those 1-yard gains into 3-yard gains, those 3-yard gains into 5-yard gains. And perhaps most importantly, those losses into no gains, and keep you at least slightly in front of the chain.
It's massive to have a guy that's like that, that's the hammer, not the nail, on a very consistent basis, specifically in the running back room, and also from a young guy who's shifty like he is, that's not back there dancing around, running 50 yards to get 4. Yeah, you put your foot in the ground and you go. So I've been impressed from him, watching him in that aspect of it. And again, as you noted too, the receiver, battle there, at the bottom of the depth chart in that group. I mean, man, it is just fun that's an intriguing battle to watch, because like being a former receiver, like I nerd out on watching those guys all the time, so it just gives me another excuse to pay more attention to them. So that's definitely going to be something I'm going to be watching down the stretch.
And how about this, man? Dawson Walter's birthday today.
Oh, happy 26
26 years young to Mr. Walter. How about
go.
that? Interesting, too, for a guy that is 26, not a lot of tread on the tire, right?
Yeah,
He's only got 9 career games in the NFL, 1 with the Giants, 4 with the Niners, and then 3 with the Jets. How about that? He played for both New York teams. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah,
you don't have to move very far.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Shoot. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. And like I said, just an overall intriguing 3 to 4 to 5 days coming up. And then after that, Patriots are coming to town.
Yeah.
And that is, I mean, you and I are going to have a lot to talk about.
Oh,
a lot to talk about. But I will say, what'll be nice this year is when we did the show in L.A. in 2021, and we recorded the training camp podcast, we were in it's like a conference room, like essentially a retrofitted conference room that had turned into like our storage area for our equipment and all that. We're going to be here.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit nicer, a little nicer digs
This is a bit.
in 2022. We don't have to get on a bus. We don't have to do anything like that. So it'll be really exciting to take advantage of what we see for those couple days of practice, and then just be able to hop in here and break it all down.
Oh, 100%. I'm looking forward to it. Don't get me wrong. I love going back to Ventura County,
Of course,
the hometown area
That's
for me.
right.
But
That's right.
definitely looking forward to doing it in our own backyard here in Vegas. And as we were talking about that, I just had the Spider-Man meme pop in my head of like the coaching staffs kind of pointing at each other like, we're all the same here. Like, I'm curious how much similarities we're going to see. That's something I'm going to be paying attention to is how similar are the groups coached, run, because again, it is that New England West type of thing that we all talk about that's so played out. But seeing them both with your own eyes in person, that's something I'm real curious to see how much they actually are similar.
And I think another aspect of this that doesn't have anything to do with the football side of it or what we see on, during those couple days of camp, or a couple days of practice, I should say, is we're going to have the New England media out here too. So it'll be kind of interesting to kind of pick their brains and see, kind of comparing and contrasting notes of how a practice is run, how the day is broken out. Like, it'll be interesting to see, like, oh, okay, like, I could totally see how Josh took this from Bill, or, oh, Josh has decided he's doing this in a completely different way, and this is kind of his spin on what he thinks a day should look like. So I think that'll be, in a very nerdy kind of way, I think that'll be interesting.
I think it's going to be a big eye-opener for that, because, the guys that have been there and done that in New England for so long, having seen all of that, I'm sure they're curious to see how Josh is doing it differently. And, again, it's a little nerdy, like deep dive into all that, but I think that's something that's, that we can draw a lot from when we look at, moving forward into the year, just to see, because, again, that narrative that's out there, how much is it that Patriots West, and how much is he branching off and doing his own thing? Because Josh has said multiple times that, I think in his first job, he noted when he went to Denver, he tried to do a carbon copy and everything exactly the same. So I would be real curious to see from those guys to learn and see, okay, what are the things that he is doing differently that maybe he's tweaked a bit that he probably did while he was in Denver?
And like all things in life, Jesse Merrick, it's all balance.
Yeah.
It's probably going to kind of land somewhere in the middle,
exactly.
as all things should. But on our way out, Jesse, 30 seconds of plugs. Where can the people find you?
Oh, yeah. Always on Twitter, at JesseNews3LV. And then, again, guys, always on Channel 3 doing our thing. We got the Aces starting tonight in the playoffs. Number 1 overall seed taking on the Phoenix Mercury. So, obviously, rooting for the family. The Aces all in the Raiders family as well. So, we're going to be diving into all of that. I'm technically off today, but I will be there tonight, helping my guy Brian out, getting ready for all the playoff action.
Big shout out to Brian. Give me the really quick, I know we're going long, but who cares? Give me the kind of skinny on this Aces series coming up.
Man, I mean, look, Aces, like I said, number 1 overall seed, Becky Hammond has come in and just not necessarily changed things, because they were a good team. They went to the semifinals last year, but completely changed the way that this team plays. I mean, they're running and gunning, kind of similar to a lot of the Run Rebels teams from the early 90s, from the 90s eras that fans out here love so much, and they are jacking up threes left and right. Becky has empowered this group to shoot the 3 ball, to shoot from anywhere. Kelsey Plum, one of these people that is just balled out, ever since Becky came to town. Asia Wilson showing that she could and just might win another MVP. She's in the argument for that. The depth that they have is crazy. For anybody that hasn't watched the Aces play yet, and if you're going to start watching them, in the playoffs here, pay attention to Chelsea Gray. She is a dog back there. They call her the point god because she just dishes it out like crazy. So much fun to watch, and she's kind of like the motor of this team late in the games.
And I will say, having been to a couple games this year, great atmosphere.
Yeah.
They do a game day right, or game night, depending on when tip-off is. I was going to say kickoff. We're in full football mode.
I'm guilty of doing that all the time.
But they do a really nice job job. It'll be really exciting to see them kind of kick off their postseason journey tonight, and we'll be tuned in with all our friends on News 3 and everyone here in Las Vegas. So for Eddie Paskal, my man Jesse Merrick, Ray, and everyone else back in the control room who's making this whole thing operational, we thank you, and we will see you guys next week. I believe on Monday? ? I
can't
think so. Ray gives me the thumbs up. Yep, we'll see you guys on Monday for episode 8 of the Raiders Training Camp podcast presented by SiriusXM.
SiriusXM puts you inside the Raiders training camp. Catch all the info on the team, plus your music, talk, comedy, and more. Subscribe now and get your first 3 months free. Be there with the Raiders.